Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Put Me in Coach. Uh, we are here today. The Center for Leadership and Learning is helping out with the live stream this week. And I'm super excited because I get the chance to bring in a couple of Indiana educators, a couple of coaches, a couple of folks that, last couple of years we haven't been able to interact quite the same way. So we've been stuck in our Twitterverse and our Facebook and all the social media. But there was a time in days of yore where these folks, Diana and Bree both, we were rolling in the conference circles here in Indiana, and we were coming to each other's presentations and being able to kind of learn from each other and find our way through coaching in K-12 and now higher ed as well. So I want to introduce everyone to Diana Knox and to Bree Steins. And I'm going to go ahead and just kick it over to Diana. Tell us a little about yourself. Tell us the title, what's your role, where at, and then I have 3 questions.
Okay.
Hopefully you can remember these. Right?
Okay.
Favorite thing about your work, the work that you do every day. One of your passions within education, and then one of your passions outside of education.
Okay. Well, I'm Diana Knox. I am a technology instructional specialist from Clay Community Schools over on the west central side of Indiana, near Terre Haute. And I live in a town called Brazil that sounds really exotic. It's not quite, it's pretty small, but I love it here. And okay, the first question, my favorite thing about my job or my work is the aha moment. I loved that when I was a classroom teacher, and I love that when I can finally get through to the teachers about the blended learning or something with Canvas. The aha moment is pretty special. A passion inside of my work is building relationships with students. That was the focus of my capstone thesis for my master's this last spring, and I think that's the foundation of everything we do. And then a passion outside of work is I'm very passionate about 4-H in the livestock industry. I live on a hog and swine farm, and so we travel the show circuits and do a lot with 4-H, and I bleed green. So if any fellow 4-Hers out there, you'll get it.
And that's no joke because Diane and I are Facebook friends, and I don't know how you've slept or done anything else, because it seems like everything I'm seeing, it's like we are going hard. This is big time. So kudos to you for carving out some time today to share some great ideas and thoughts here with folks tuning in on all the platforms. Bree, let's hear it.
Thanks, Marcus. And it's so good to see you guys. Like you were saying earlier, it's great. So my name's Bree, Brianna, and I am a learning designer at the University of Notre Dame, which is still kind of weird for me to say, over a year into it. And I spent 5 years teaching high school Spanish and was also a coach, like Marcus was saying. But here at Notre Dame, I work with faculty on, online courseware, course design, lots of different stuff. So that kind of leads me into one of my favorite things about my job is that I do so many different things. 1 week I'm working on a project about biology and vectors and all sorts of stuff I don't know much about, right? And I have a little bit of a bug phobia too, so that's interesting stuff. But and then the next day I might be working with Shakespeare and how it relates to film and different literature. So just a really wide array of projects and courses. All right, passion inside of education. And I have to say, I think we could talk about our passions inside of education probably like all day. So I'll try. I'll mention maybe a newer one for me, which, in this new role, just accessibility and the huge mountain that is, right? Like, I feel like when I was a classroom teacher, sure, I made great accommodations and things like that, but thinking about accessibility from a course design level, right? And like, how do we make it better for everyone? So that's a newer one, I would say. And then outside of education, lots of things. my knee jerk is to mention travel, but I have to say, I can't stop watching the Olympics. So,
Right.
so as of late, I'm so into the Olympics, and it kind of plays into, I have a real passion for different cultures and awareness in different parts of the world. So I was a Spanish teacher, so figures, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always forget that you were too.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you on the Olympics. It's, I wish we were able to have people there. But I find myself tuning into the weird, obscure stuff.
Oh yeah.
I'm definitely like, I'm solid on the prime time NBC swimming, gymnastic. I get that, but I like to go deep cuts too. And I'm all about tuning into like USA midday for some, handball
I was
or
just thinking that.
rugby or something, like there's some off the beaten path stuff out there. So definitely if you're an educator and you're sort of soaking up what's left of your summer, probably no better way than to tune into the Olympics and get your learn on with some of these more they're skateboarding in the Olympics now.
Yeah.
Like, what? My daughter about freaked out when she saw that. She's like, "What is that?" I go, "That's the Olympics." She goes, "But they're skateboarding." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's an Olympic sport now." And she was baffled. And then she proceeded to say that, the people on the video game are better than the people at the Olympics. I said, "Well, honey, I'm not going to get into it right now, but they're pretty good. Let's just leave it at that." So I'm really excited to have both Diana and Bree here because we want to focus today on talking about the coaching angle on getting back to school. And I realize that we know that this sort of is kind of a niche area in education. There's a lot of us, but it's certainly a very specific skill set that coaches have both in K-12 and higher ed, that ability to balance, your knowledge base, your skill set with the communication skills it takes to communicate efficiently with adult learners. Because oftentimes, as much as Diana, and Bree both, we love to be working with students, but the primary amount of our time is with adult learners, is with a professor or a TA or classroom teacher, and that's a whole other ball of wax.
That was a learning curve, big learning curve.
Absolutely. So I want to start off with talking about some of those challenges. So what is one of the biggest challenges that you have faced or maybe currently facing within your role as it relates to Canvas? So try to focus in on Canvas. What's the big challenge that you're seeing, Diana, in your district, either in the past or now relating to Canvas?
That's a loaded question. I think probably the biggest challenge, accessibility is definitely on my plate. Bree, I always laugh because I think that as coaches, we sometimes lead these parallel lives that, because things come to the forefront. So we're all trying to confront this. But so accessibility is on the plate. But under that accessibility umbrella is the push that we have to align the individual courses with our district expectations. We wanted our teachers to have the autonomy to create and design courses that fit their personalities and fit their subject areas. We didn't predetermine templates, and that would have been much easier for us because then it would have been set up and there'd be no question on some things. So we're really hard hitting that streamlining process. And in our district, I'm super fortunate. We hired an elementary technology specialist. So I get to return back to my secondary level, which is definitely where I have a better knowledge base. That primary world, that was a whole new world for me. And so I'm really looking forward to that, being able to focus in on the buildings that are secondary and working with those teachers and administrators to work on those goals for us.
That's awesome. I love that. And I want to speak to that, but I want to hear from Bree first. That
is with the primary. Oh yeah. You when you meet teachers and they're like, "Oh, I'm elementary." You're like, "Oh."
Yes.
They think the same thing. They're like, "You teach high school? Oh no." Right. So
right.
It's always so
That's
funny.
but it's mutual respect club, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I always use the same example. You guys have probably heard this. My sister is an elementary teacher, and she's bounced around. They've cycled and done all the things. So, but she's been anywhere from kindergarten up to I think fourth grade. And we had this realization moment not long after she graduated from college, where I said, "You teach kids how to read." And I was like, I am baffled. Like the the little lamb scurries into your classroom, does not read,
Mhm.
scurries out of your classroom, reading, mind blower. And she immediately was like, "You teach kids Shakespeare." And I was like, and to me, that's way easier than what she does. But she thought
Right.
the reverse. So I just love that, like, especially as coaches too, you get to, uh, specifically in K-12, you get to kind of be in the mix with all of that, and be mutually respected by everybody.
I have a whole new appreciation for those very special kindergarten teachers in our lives.
Absolutely,
They
absolutely.
are amazing.
Yes, and it's again, it's folks that come from secondary backgrounds. It is almost a completely different language,
Taking for
and
granted.
wrapping around that.
Yeah, taking for granted that the functionality of a keyboard and a mouse. And I just had a kindergarten teacher in my office just a little bit ago, and she said, sometimes they come in and I'm trying to teach them how to log in, and they don't know where the A is on the keyboard. They don't even know what an A is sometimes.
Right.
And so then, within a month, they have these students logging in independently, and that's just amazing to watch that process.
Yeah, it's crazy that logging into a Chromebook or a laptop as a kindergartner, um, not maybe having a firm grasp of their ABCs quite yet, particularly not visually. They could probably sing the song, but to be able to do that hunt and peck, I
Mhm.
get that, like, without certain technology tools, the login process certainly can
Mhm.
be quite an ordeal. Um, Bree, what about you? What is your biggest challenge, or what has been your biggest challenge with Canvas there at Notre Dame?
Yeah, so recently we just adopted Canvas, enterprise wide. So the program that I work with a lot of the time is our summer online program, and we've been using Canvas for I think 2 years now. So, lately it's been managing, some instructors in Canvas, or, they taught one course in Canvas, but then they're bouncing to a different LMS. So I'll be happy when we're all on the same one, but that's a little ways out still. So, with that, a lot of the times I work with instructors who say, things like, well, I can do, X in this LMS. How do I do that? But it's almost like, okay, let's back up. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? What are those objectives and what are those goals? Instead of just like, how do I mimic this in the LMS? Right. So kind of taking that back step has been um, a challenge in a way, but it's also like that's a welcome challenge because that opens the door for let's talk about your course and let's talk about, some design and things like that.
That I love that, and we talk about, sort of, working backwards in education all the time. You start with, what is my desired outcome? What am
Right.
I trying to achieve with these learners at the end? What's the end game? And then in this case, how do I design to get there? But I love what you said about, because I think it relates to all educators that are using probably any digital platform, specifically an LMS. And I certainly have seen it myself, is this idea of, thing A worked this way, and now I'm working with thing B. How do I just smush those things together? And
Yeah.
I think that's what you're describing at Notre Dame, transitioning to Canvas, is exactly what we see everywhere, K-12 and higher ed. Um, and it's sometimes you just can't, stick a square peg in a round hole,
Right.
and it's not going to work that exact way. And what you
Right.
brought up is that coach mentality that I love, which is, but wait,
Yeah.
why? Why? Because that's the thing that I think that's the step that I think a lot of folks, Canvas users, can miss in those early days of implementation and rollout in the fall or whenever it might be. Is why are you doing that? And 9 times out of 10, there isn't a really clear answer, because it's a comfort thing. I feel like it's a comfort thing. Like, can I just make this thing do the same exact thing here? That's comfortable to me. I
Right.
get it. I completely get it. But it's like now you have this powerful tool that can really ramp up everything you did. And so when you ask the question why, maybe there's a better answer with all the new power you've got within Canvas. Diana, can you speak to that kind of transition as you've seen it over the years in your district?
The transition from
Just
converting to
going,
Canvas?
yeah.
Absolutely. We are in our 5th year full. I'm starting my 5th year in this job, and that was the first year of full Canvas implementation at 6 to 12. And so watching that evolution, and you see those teachers that are constantly trying to improve their game. And the one phrase I'm working on trying to really work with is, well, this works for me. I want to say, how is this best for your students? Now, our poor elementary teachers, I was just reflecting on this. Last year was crazy. And so we made the decision during the summer of 2020 that we were going to go full on Canvas K to 12. And man, we shoved our elementary teachers into the deep end of the pool. And I was their lifeboat. And they cried. They were frustrated. But it was really rewarding at the end of the year. And our new technology specialist was trained by then, and she did a lot of work with them. And she kept coming back and saying they can reflect on how much they've grown and what they know now. And they're starting to see the why, and they're starting to see how they can improve it. And that, as a coach, that's all you can ask for, is that constant reflection. And yep, I was there, now I'm here. And how can I even get further down the line to be better? And so that's wonderful to see.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that's what probably anyone in education would want to see, regardless of your role, but particularly in a coaching role, that's what you're shooting for. We every time you're working with a teacher, you're trying to, move the thinking to a place where they can actually self-reflect and celebrate that progress. I saw the same thing this past year. Through the fall of last year and through the end of the year, with having certain teachers dedicated specifically to being remote and then coming back. Those folks, our remote teachers that were able to come back and be face to face later in the year, they were the best proponents of effective use of digital anything, right? Because they were like, I lived it. Now I'm back where I was accustomed to, but I have this whole huge new section in my tool belt. And it's like, yeah, all of those things you did remote play really nicely here as well. And I think that's something that I hope folks take out of the last couple of years of education. It, as you said, you pushed them into the deep ends, and we're swimming.
Yeah,
we're staying there, and we're going to be able to continue on. And I think, at least in our case, Canvas is a big part of that. Bree, let's transition a little bit here. Thinking about Canvas, thinking about your experience not only in K-12 but then now in higher ed, if there's one thing in Canvas that you constantly refer back to with teachers, professors, TAs, is there one thing within Canvas that you find yourself always suggesting or recommending to folks?
Oh, that's another big question, right?
I like to ask the heavy hitting questions, people.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to give a bit of an unorthodox answer. So, there's all the great, tips and tricks like message students who, or, communication tools and things like that. But I have to say that kind of back to what we were talking about earlier, like maybe there's not a way to take LMS element here and make it in Canvas. So something I've really, been doing the last year since I came to Notre Dame more so is, okay, you want to do this. Maybe there's not an obvious like tool, but how could we make something work in Canvas, right? Like think outside the box and how could we make it work, and just like kind of throw things against the wall and see what comes of it. And after a few iterations, you come to something that works really well, and you're in Canvas and you don't have to use a third-party tool or anything like that. So, last my supervisor previously was like, I have this instructor, they want to do journals, but they don't want to do an assignment, and they want like one big journal. They want it all together. How am I going to do this? And we figured it out. Use discussions. It's great, right?
Yeah.
Like you guys have seen this trick. It's great. And then now you don't need anything else. It works really well. So just kind of like forcing myself to think of those other things that maybe aren't so obvious.
That's awesome. That to me again, folks, listen to me when I tell you this is why I had these two on, because like I love that, because that again that's that coach mindset. Like we are going to problem solve, we are going to work around, we're going to find a way. And ultimately, again, it comes back to, and I loved what you said about getting rid of those third party additions. Now I'm all for I love a built-in something. I love an app. Canvas has got tons of them that work wonderfully.
Mhm.
But I am all about streamline, particularly with those younger learners. And
Yep.
so referencing that and saying, you know what, can we do this in an equally user-friendly way within the platform without extra stuff that's going to add extra login or this thing, and then I love it. I love that mentality. Diana, now you're in the hot seat. Same question. What's that thing that you always harken back to when talking and working with teachers?
Well, I'm going to piggyback even on what Bree says, because I love that problem solving method. And so it's getting into the nitty gritty of thinking about why they want to do what they want to do and how they need it to work for them. My patented is the message student too, because if you look back during the pandemic, we had really low completion rates of assignments. And so that was a great way to remind those students and create that paper trail. But where I really love is that digging in and finding those unconventional ways. Canvas brings so much to the table. My teachers roll their eyes because I could talk about Canvas for hours, because I love it so much. Because yes, it's this big blank canvas, and that is intimidating to people sometimes. But that canvas is so flexible because you can take all of those different tools and features of Canvas and mold them to whatever use that you're looking for. So last spring, I worked a lot on how you can use Canvas to build relationships with students. And it was really satisfying for me as a coach to explore how I could use that, but then even to talk to those teachers about the assignments and the things that they're doing, and not even their assessments that were curricularly related. Like, I'm going to take that page out of Kona Jones's book and using Canvas to get to know my students, to check in on them. And I think that those things are powerful, because if you don't have that solid foundation with your students, then the rest may not come together the way you want.
Absolutely. So good. God, I got warm and toasties. And there's nobody here. It's just me and Ron. It's just me and
I see him.
Just me and Ron
Yep.
Swanson here. We're just hanging out, but like he doesn't have a lot of emotion, but I'm going to compensate because I'm loving all of that. So I wanted the last kind of the topic that I wanted to kind of finish out with. I just wanted to talk about some of the things that are on the horizon, right? Because we've talked a little bit about some experience throughout the pandemic and adjustment that we've faced and obstacles we've overcome as educators. And then, we're talking about getting back to school. Diana's back in the office talking to teachers today. Bree's probably never left the office. The everybody I talk to, everything I see, I tweeted it today. Check the tape. I tweeted like my Twitter feed is an amazingly happy place right now, and it was because I saw nothing but scroll of back to school, let's get it, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, training camp starts for the Bears too, and that was good. But mostly the education stuff. But we got to move forward. We're in it. We're coming back, and there are some great things that we can, as coaches, that we can leverage to everyone's advantage, to help administrators, to help teachers, and of course, obviously, the end game to help students. Um, One of the things I wanted to bring up is something that Diana's directly involved with, and that is our Indiana Canvas user group. Um, and I bring it up because we knew each other before this, before I got involved in the group. Y'all let me join. I'm not sure why, but I'm appreciative. But tell the folks watching and who are going to be watching later, who are in a state, maybe maybe they're in a state that just adopted Canvas statewide. Maybe they're in a district who just recently has made that transition, or maybe they've had it forever and they just don't have a user group. Talk a little bit about, maybe how that came about and what the goals have been for the Indiana user group.
I gotta say, we have that hashtag Canvas fam, and that is super powerful because we have a special time in education. When I first started teaching, it wasn't about sharing everything, and right now it is. And so when I took this job and we adopted Canvas, one of the first things I heard about was the NQ group, and we're on Twitter. It's IN Canvas UE, Indiana Canvas Users and Educators. And I went to my first meeting and I was amazed because the rules of NQ are, this is a problem solving space. We're not a complaining space. We're a problem solving space. So we crowdsource topics. What do we want to talk about? We have locations that we meet around central Indiana. Yeah, it's a drive for those people from northern and southern. So I apologize about that. But, you get together and it's that networking component that is so valuable because I don't have all the answers. I don't have to have all the answers, but somebody in my Canvas fam does. And then you create those conversations where you get to know who's in a similar scenario as you, because the problems I faced in my small corporation, Marcus and I were talking about this prior to going live. What I face in my small corporation is going to be a little bit different than somebody in the larger corporations. And so you learn who is going to be in those similar places. And so those become your outlets and your resources that you go to first, and then you can crowdsource. And so NQ has been super, super valuable to me. I'm so excited. Kyle Beinfor and I are working on planning our first session for the fall. We're going to do a blend of in-person and online for those who cannot join. So we just started that discussion this week. So if you are an NQ person, follow along. If you're not in Indiana, we welcome people from outside as well. The Hoosiers are known for being a friendly state.
Just come on over.
Come on and join us.
Yeah, the group is great. And again, if you're a person who's watching and you're thinking, I need that in my life, I need something like that, then by all means, reach out on Twitter, and we can get on a call, we can figure it out. But having been with NQ for a couple of years, I'm not an OG in the NQ group. I was new to it. But just with the couple of years that I've been involved, it is everything Diana just explained and more. And it's so great because there's no limit. Like, it's not like it's just for administrators or just for teachers. We run the gamut. We've got everything from, superintendents and assistant superintendents through classroom teachers in that group. And so again, it's that network piece, the ability to be face to face, a couple of times a year. But Diana's exactly right. Being able to say that person gets my struggle. They're at a district just like mine. Their organization is similar to mine, all of that stuff. And so it's really, really a great way to continue your sort of Canvas journey with people, like-minded people not just in your building or district, but outside of that.
Two things I want to add, if I can, real quick.
Absolutely.
One of the things I think is valuable, Eddie and Marcus and I had crossed paths a lot at other conferences, but I remember sitting down and listening to Eddie's passion about Canvas Studio, and it made me go back and dig into Canvas Studio a little bit more. So, I mentioned that Canvas is this broad platform, and so sometimes you focus in on what fits your needs. So when you go to an NQ meeting and you hear about these other things that Canvas has to offer, then you go back and you start digging and you've got a resource. And so the NQ's been super awesome for that. And just as a plug, the teachers that I take from our district regularly will tell me I get more out of my morning with my NQ group than I do some conferences, because of that positivity and the problem solving space where there's always somebody with a suggestion to your problem.
I love that. And there's something to be said for that positive peer pressure. It's like, I'm just grinding in my district. I'm trying to do all the things and have all the PD, but I haven't really gotten involved with, in your example, studio. And then you hear somebody else who's like, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And you're like, whoa. I don't want to be the outlier. I need to be involved. And so I love that element. Again, all part of, having a Canvas user group. Bree, I want to shift over to you, and actually probably both of you can chime in on this. There's this new thing, which as a person that's been in K-12 for 20 years, the mere concept is mind-blowing to me. And this concept called Panda Pros from Canvas is crazy to me, because we all know that when you need support, when you're calling on behalf of your tech department or on behalf of yourself, or you're trying to get some person on the phone to help you with something, we know how challenging that can be. Or I do the chat on my phone a lot of times, and it's clear that this is a robot that's just dealing with me on the superficial level. But Panda Pros is this new initiative from Canvas where basically you can go to the Instructure website and sign up for one-on-one instruction with a real life expert on basically whatever you want as it pertains to Canvas, whether you're an administrator wanting to set up courses for your teachers, for PD, whatever it may be. Maybe you're the football coach and you want to set up a course to have all the parents or all the players in there as a communication avenue. Or a teacher and you're like, I'm stuck. I need to do this thing. I need to take this square peg into this round hole. And I'm stuck and I need some help. And maybe I don't want to, maybe I don't like Marcus as my coach in my district and I don't want to deal with him. Maybe I learn better one-on-one. I need someone right there on my shoulder. So either or both of you, tell us a little bit about what you think Panda Pros might mean for folks that you work with on a daily basis.
I'll chime in. I'll jump in. There's also the element of it being so approachable, right? Like, no agenda. Here's the link. Like, what you got, right? Come and ask. And that I think is really powerful, because, when I was coaching in K-12, I would make a point to kind of go out and seek out teachers, right? Like, that sounds kind of like forceful. It wasn't like that. It was like, hey,
I get it.
Yeah, like, hey, I'm going to sit in the English department office today and work. Like, if you have a question, pop in, right? Like an office hours type of thing.
Yes.
And that's kind of what this reminds me of. So I think that's really powerful. And especially at this time of year, right? When we all want to do new things, but time is a, limited resource. So
for sure.
I think that personalization element, we hear a lot about personalized learning. And when I'm given access to a pro and I get to choose the agenda and that I'm able to localize on what is most pressing and important to me right then, that is so powerful in the hands of a teacher.
I agree. It's crazy to me that it even exists, but I'm here for it. I've even seen a few folks with some Panda Pros t-shirts on my Twitter feed recently, and I'm like, okay, all right, let's go. So definitely check that out. The link's right there on the screen. It'll be in the notes as well. Just a great opportunity. We're always trying to reach all the different types of learners in our classrooms. And so this is sort of just a zoomed out version of that, right? If you've got teachers in your district or in your institution who you think might be able to capitalize, it's as simple as clicking on a link and signing up. And they set up the time with you, and you get that sort of personal touch that I think is kind of hard to find in terms of support these days. I want to skip down to the last question. We're going to let folks get on with their day. But I do have one final question. This is another tough one, so it's okay. I have wait time, and you can have think time. All right? So, question is this. I know. There's a quiz. Best advice you've been given or can give to others in coaching roles in their districts or institutions. If you had one piece of advice that you've received or one piece of advice you would give to a fellow coach, what might that be?
Ooh.
Wow.
I probably should think this through, but I'm like a knee-jerk reaction type of gal. So
let's roll with it.
Here we go. A few things. Don't underestimate that we call it, faculty accompaniment, right? Like just being there, because, and it might not be a big thing to you, right? It might be like, oh yeah, right. Like you just make a sequence of assignment, right? It might be so simple to someone like us, but that could make a huge impact in someone's course, and to just, be there and walk somebody through it. My supervisor once recently she gave me an award. She just took a new role. So when she left, she gave us awards, and she gave me the Covered Bridge Award, right? And she talked about how, kind of a bridge between this, can be intimidating office of digital learning and making courseware, right? And being there with a faculty member on that bridge, and it's covered up and they're safe, but like, here we go, we're walking, right? So I think just don't underestimate those small things. They can make a big impact.
And you didn't practice that ahead of time?
No, I didn't even have it written down.
That was you just off the cuff. That was beautiful. Did y'all hear that?
Thanks.
Rewind later. After this is all set, rewind and listen to that again. For multiple reasons. But the Covered Bridge Award, sign me up for that one. I love that. As long as there's not a dude with a pumpkin in his head at the end of it. Just saying. Diana, save me.
Man, I'll tell you, that's a good question. And Bree, I loved your answer. I think of a couple different things. Number one, I think the thing that I see new to Canvas users, they're always intimidated. And, I use that cliche of Rome wasn't built in a day. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Pick one thing, make that your priority, work on it. Once you're comfortable with that, add something else. Don't try to conquer it all at once, because you'll overwhelm yourself and you'll get frustrated. And that's, the challenge there. And as a coach, Dr. Katie Jenner gave me probably the best piece of advice I've been given. And she's our Secretary of Education, Superintendent of Education in Indiana now. But back when she was an assistant sup down at Madison, and I was in my first years of this, she said, water your flowers. In this job, you're going to have the people that want your help. You're going to have the people that accept your help, and you're going to have the people that are resistant. But when you water your flowers, they overtake the weeds. And so eventually some of those weeds become flowers because they don't want to be left behind, or they see those successes other people are having. And if you focus on that negative, you become negative. But if you focus on the positives, that positivity breeds and spreads.
Love it.
Whew. Good gravy. Shut my mouth. Man, I mean, I'm just going to step away. We're going to call it. We're calling it because we can't top that. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Watch it later on all the things: LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, wherever else. Definitely a lot of great content here. I thank you so much, Diane and Bree, for taking time out of your schedules to talk to the folks, talk to me, share your expertise. And we're going to kick it back to Eddie. Eddie's going to shut us down. And you guys have an amazing, amazing week. Thank you
Thanks
so
for having
much.
us. I loved it.
Thank you. Good talking to you guys.